everyone, and welcome to the White Matter podcast. This is a podcast about modern business intelligence, data analytics, and data teams. I'm your host, Rahul, the founder and CEO of DataBrain. We're a modern analytics platform built for agents. And today with me, I have a very special guest. I have Prudhvi, who's also a good friend of mine. And so Prudhvi has been working at Postman, as many of you know, as a very popular API company. And before that, he's been in the data space for several years now. And he also has an MBA from a very well-reputed B school as well. So, Prithvi, welcome to the show. I'll maybe hand it over to you and you can maybe introduce yourself to our guests.
Thanks, Rahul. Great being part of this. Yes, so I've been in the data space since 2010, right out of college. I started my career with Mu Sigma. It's one of the first pure play analytics firms. And then, like you said, I did my MBA from IIM Calcutta. And then I had like a 5-year stint with a company called My Smart Price in the e-commerce space. I was heading their analytics there. And then been with Postman for the last 6.5 years. I lead the data team here. We are basically responsible for enabling everybody in the company with data analytics, insights. Anything to do with data generally goes through our team. So we have a data engineering team, an analytics engineering team, and a data analytics team. We have a couple of product analytics, marketing analytics folks as well who closely work with stakeholders. But the primary objective is to make sure anyone who wants to make data-backed decisions, we support them. Right. So.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that intro. So you've been in the space for a very long time, and you've observed sort of like the field evolve as well. And you must have worked with like a bunch of teams together. And I think you've also written about how a lot of analysis that data teams do. The expectation is that not everything goes and becomes like productized per se. So I think would love to hear more on that thought. I think it's a very interesting thing that you've mentioned because one of the things that we tell engineers coming in as well is like build a lot of product, but a lot of stuff may not go into production in a startup or even in like a larger company, and you have to be okay with that mindset, right?
Right. So yes, I mean, oftentimes data is interesting, right? Like I think 10, 12 years back, I don't think people were looking at data for every decision they were making. And suddenly you have access to data. So a lot of leaders are generally curious. Hey, how does this look? What do you think is happening here? What do you think is happening there? But that might not really result into something that is useful for the organization or that something moves the metric, right? And we've seen this, like, there is an ask and you deliver it and there is kudos and claps and everybody's like impressed. The question is, so what, right? So what is going to happen after that? So we could try and solve this two ways. Number one is, formalize the process in which data teams, analytics teams support, right? So whenever somebody asks me something, I'm like, hey, what are you trying to do? What is the impact of this analysis going to be? And then actually we have like a Jira process in which people need to fill in some of these fields. And then while filling, 50% of them know that, hey, maybe I don't need this because I don't have an idea of what I'm going to do with it, right? So that is how you, again, what we are trying to do here is not waste anybody's time, right? So we need to respect an analyst's time. So some of them stop there, but for those people who think that, hey, I think there is a business case for me and I can take some help, that's when we go do analysis, etc. Even here, right? Like a lot of analysis are good, interesting insights, but how do you convert them? Right. So again, an analysis should never stop at data. Earlier, we used to say that share an insight so that it is useful, but you should take a step further and you should even suggest an action item, right? How should this insight result to an action being taken? And then you follow up on the action item and then measure if that action resulted in a positive uptick of any metric, right? So if we can do this again and again, at least see a lot of times analysts said like, hey, Vasa, I did this. I don't know what happened because a lot of service, like again, analytics, when it started, there's a lot of pure play services companies. The client is there. Client asks you something. You don't know what he's
Right.
going to do with it or what happened to it. So the analysts are always like unhappy that I don't know the impact of what I have done. So at least in product companies, when you have the luxury, you go and measure the impact of your work. So that way, I think the longevity also increases for the analysts. And even the business leader is more like, even if it's a rupee, he's more happier that, something came out of this. So
Yeah. No, that's a very, very interesting point, and actually, I think that's very forward thinking into a lot of the organizations that we've seen, and at least from the outside, it looks like you're running it like an SDLC process where there is sort of like a feedback loop associated with the work you do.
yes,
And
yes, yes.
psychologically, I think the interesting point you mentioned is like people love to get that feedback of like having impact at work.
Right.
It's not like everything is lost, out there. So I think so when you're looking for thinking about how you hire these kind of people, right? So when you're looking at people who have this mindset, do you judge for systems thinking? Do you judge for like problem solving ability? Do you judge for like presentation skills? How's that sort of balance?
Right. Again, it depends on the context you are in, right? Let's say I can talk about Postman being a product company, PLG company, versus if I recruit at a Mu Sigma, it could be completely different, right? Maybe presentation skills take a little more weightage in a service based company where you need to share insights outside, right, of the
Yep.
organization. But here, the number one thing I look at is for problem solving, right? How good is somebody at problem solving? We don't really look at a particular tool that people are good at, because I mean, at least in my example, when I started, there's a tool called SAS, we used to call it, right? And then we moved to SQL, and then I went to my MBA. By the time I came back, there is R all over the
Right.
place, right? It was super cool. I was like, I haven't learned it yet. And then Python came and R lost its charm, and
Right.
people are Python. So I think the tools keep evolving. Even the BI tools, right? I don't think two companies use the same BI tool. Everybody has their comfort space, right? So problem solving is one. And again, so when I talk to people, again, I give them the benefit of doubt, and I see if they are looking at the impact of their work, right? If they're just saying, I've built a, prediction model, or I've built this report. No, but it's like, hey, I've built this, which saved so much, or I've built this, which led to launching us a new product, right? So that kind of thinking and the problem solving ability is what I see.
Right.
Again, again, talking in an interview versus doing the things are
Right.
different. So there should be a good balance between, when you hire freshers, you have the freedom to mold them as per your requirements, right? So the culture can be
Yep.
controlled. And when you're hiring laterals, they bring some sort of culture with them. So you need to have a balance between these two as well. Right.
Right. Right. And I think one of the interesting sort of org structures you mentioned was like going from like a centralized services mindset to more like an embedded sort of data team, right?
Right.
And in that sort of setup, do you hire for like knowledge specific to like finance, for example, or RevOps, or is that like an add-on that you feel like people can learn on the job as long as they're good
Right.
at being
I
coached?
think there is always a clash between my thinking and the stakeholder thinking here. The stakeholder always thinks a subject matter expert could do better. I
Right.
always think the analyst should be able to do any domain
Right.
uh, almost good, right?
Yeah.
So coming back, we always, how we do it here, at least, there's no right answer here, right?
Right.
Is we start somebody central. We start by embedding them, and we see how it goes. We see how the impact is. If we see if we are able to make an impact, if the stakeholder is happy. And then if there is a gap which we are not able to solve, let's say maybe, right, you've solving for traffic, right, to your website, and obviously you'll go read up, you'll understand what Google Search Console is, you'll understand what traffic sources are, referrals are, first touch, last touch. Maybe you could do that, but if somebody wants to run marketing campaigns, market mix models, etc., then they're like, hey, can we get somebody more, specific to this? So then you can go and hire them, right?
Right.
So again, all depends on what you're doing, what you're solving. Maybe you just started this and then you realize, hey, our SEO is great. We're getting 90% of all traffic to your
Right.
website. All so then maybe you may not want to hire a specialist, but if you're trying to solve some specific problem sets, yes, hire
Right.
the. But either of
Right.
the case, I believe in onboarding either of them through a common means. So again, that culture, the mindset is similar.
Right. Right.
So which is problem solving, which is action
Right.
oriented, all of that. So
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And one of the things I want to sort of shift towards is the role of like sort of the analyst itself. I think over the years, what I've seen is, there is one end of the spectrum, which is like, being more technical,
right,
being able to work with the tooling. And I think you're of
right,
the mindset, I think, so, kind of like me, where you're saying that, hey, the tools come and go. You have to have sort of like the problem solving capabilities, and you can always pick
right.
up like SQL, for example. And in
Hmm.
my experience as well, SQL has kind of stayed constant throughout Python here and there and stuff. So how have you seen the role evolve with
Right,
new titles like analytics engineer and
right,
the
right. See, again, just going back, right? Data never existed, right?
yeah,
Uh, Let's say you hire an analyst, and the analyst goes behind a software engineer, the head of engineering, and he's like, "Hey, can you dump this data to an Excel sheet? I'll do some analysis and I'll give you," right? That's where we started. And now you have data pipelines running
yep,
all the time. There is a data warehouse, data lake, where the data keeps coming in automatically, right? And
right,
then the luxury of not worrying about where the data is, right?
right,
So earlier, if you were running some queries and drawing some graphs and getting some insight, you were
right,
very valuable, right? Like if
right,
you're generating, and it's still valuable, definitely, but if you're just generating the insight, you were valuable. Now, see, data has been democratized a lot, right?
yep,
Like whether it's successful or not is a second story. Now, I think everybody
right,
wants to democratize data. If you ask a product manager, if you ask a growth manager, they want to analyze data themselves. A lot of
yep,
these PM and growth and business roles, data itself, data analysis or generating insights itself became like 20-30% of their roles, right?
right,
If they are doing it already and they are comfortable sometimes if you give them the data and not
right,
the direct insight. So there are all kinds of people, right? Maybe if they
right,
don't have time, they're like, hey, why don't you run the entire analysis? If they have time,
right,
they want get their hands dirty. They're like, hey, can I get the data? So
right,
now, if you're a person who is just running a query and getting insights out, it's not enough. I
yeah,
think a long time back, 4 5 years back itself, it started moving left, right?
right,
Where you understand how the data modeling is happening. You
right,
understand what kind of queries or what kind of asks come in. Accordingly,
mm,
how do you fill your data so that for a growth manager or a product manager or an engineering manager, it's easy to pick a dimension table and run a query.
right,
Earlier, that problem didn't exist. Earlier, they were
right,
just asking something, you were giving them something. Now
right,
you're like gaining, like, let's say 20-30 data sets which somebody else outside the team can also query. So now
right,
you are still, see, again, the bottom line is you are definitely running queries and doing insights.
right,
That's not going anywhere. On top of it, how good were you doing data modeling, right? How
right,
good at understanding how the data ingestions happen, how the data transformations happen, what frequency they should happen. So moving a
right,
little left. This was
right,
4 5 years back.
right,
And now with agentic space, what has happened? This product manager and engineering manager got replaced by an agent, right?
yep,
An agent is being asked questions, and an agent is able to get answers directly. There's like
correct,
set of functions it does.
right,
Now, how does the agent know which table to pick up,
right,
right? So your data modeling becomes all the more important. So now
right,
yours has moved from generating insights to democratizing data across humans to now democratizing data across humans plus agents plus
yep,
dashboard, right?
right,
So how are you changing your data modeling for this new
right,
world? And this new world is crazy, right? Like an analysis which takes 10 minutes is happening in 10 days is happening in 10 minutes. So you can't
right,
say that you have to make it work even if it doesn't
right,
work, right? So there is a lot of value in this type of movement. So how are you making the data stack ready for that? Right? Again,
yep,
tooling is one part of it, but how are you making sure that
yep,
the data now the insight is ready in 10 minutes and you
right,
can't the data gets refreshed every day. So
right,
you need to call these calls, right?
right,
You're not immune to the engineering decisions anymore.
right,
So that's how I
right.
see the role evolving. It was moving left, it is moving further left now, is what I
Yep.
think.
Yeah, that's a very well sort of put together framework. I think what LLMs have accelerated is the need to maintain a central source of truth, reducing the hallucination part, because hallucination is a feature of LLMs, not a bug. right? It's that's the reality we kind of live in. So
Right.
I think the teams that are moving fastest have this sort of well modeled, well sort of defined
Correct.
architecture. Um,
See, you're calling it a, let's say, coming back to the trait of problem solving, you were solving a product problem or a
right,
market problem. Now you're solving a data stack problem. So if you think
correct,
everything is problem solving exercise, I think
right,
people will be
right,
open to take these roles. But
right,
if, again, coming back to who would I not hire is somebody who is still saying that I'm not comfortable doing all of this. I want
right,
to do. Maybe, yes, in some cases that deep domain knowledge definitely helps. But I think I want to, build teams which are more centralized and
right,
cleaning and everything. So,
right. Awesome. So I'm going to move on to a controversial topic across the industry, which is
okay.
are data analysts the role itself, is it going to be in existence? Maybe people are calling AGI for other areas, but for data analysts for this conversation, or do you feel on the other end it's going to be more important than ever? Right, like human judgment becomes really important. LLMs are good at doing what they're doing, but they lack the context. So you have to have the human in the loop, sort of understand, and then as the business evolves, right? Like the role of a data analyst becomes more and more important.
Right. Again, I think the answer changes every day.
Okay.
I think 2 years back when we built our first agent where an agent does everything that an analyst
Right.
does, it royally failed. It did like 30% of the job. And it didn't even know which 30% was accurate. Right. And now we
True.
are in a situation where we have a lot of specific agents which are doing great job. But I don't see the analyst role diminishing as yet. It might. I don't know. I don't know. I'm bad at guessing. But I think, like I said, at least in our teams, the role has changed,
Yeah.
right? From empowering people to empowering agents, getting more context, right? And I think, again, I was super happy 2 days back and last few days I was seeing that people are trying to take 100 decisions in 100 minutes because they're getting answers. So now again, maybe we'll need to go and redefine the entire thing. No, what are you
Right.
trying to solve? What is the
Right.
insight, action item? You're not doing any of it. You
Right.
just, because there is availability, you're just asking questions and getting answers, but where is it going? So I don't know. I
Right.
think things will evolve, but I can actually dream of this infinite efficient loop, let's say
Right.
of a experimentation as an
Right.
exercise. I can run like an experiment, fail,
Right.
improve, run faster, get the best
Right.
experiment. Theoretically, yes, I don't see it happening yet, but interesting times, I would say. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer, but definitely the role is changing. So I
Right.
don't know whether jobs will diminish or not,
Right.
to a comment for me at least. So,
Yeah, I think though that's a really good way of putting sort of the data space itself, and I would kind of like take that to the org level itself. I think if you maybe one sort of scenario we might end up living in is the entire org becomes like an experimentation loop where things are happening very very quickly. Like earlier decisions used to be made at quarterly review and
right.
business review and quarterly earnings call, and we might have earnings call every week. Things change so fast, probably, right? Like at the business level, you might have to report how things change so quickly. I think one advice that you would give to someone today who's graduating, who's trying to get into the data field, I think the data space has been very relevant to how
Yeah.
businesses take decisions. I think business intelligence and data analytics will probably not diminish. One advice you
Right.
would give to someone graduating, maybe someone who's worked in the industry, to stay relevant.
Yeah. Before that, just wanted to add, right? Recently, I've interacted with a couple of students, couple of friends. I see a lot more folks taking up data engineering these days than they used to previously, which is, I think, a great sign, right? Like if these data engineers and data analysts are problem solvers, could be like a better fit for the whole data space, right? So again, the move
Yep.
left. I see in my team itself, people are able to, earlier they used to wait for the data engineer to write and build some code.
Right.
Now they're using LLMs to build some code and get it for a review with the data
Right.
engineer, right? So now for let's say people fresh out of college, students fresh out of college, they have great access to tooling where they can experiment and learn. Like for
Right.
early, we used to look for a live project here. internship there, right? But
Right.
now my advice would be to go and get your hands dirty, build something, analyze something, get some insights out, so you can have a real conversation in an interview or when you're
Right.
applying for a job, right? So what more do you want if people already have the skill even
Right.
before join your organization, right? So please spend time learning, please spend time iterating, failing, see what blogs people are writing on what problems they solve. Why don't you
Right.
try to artificial problem using an LLM and try and solve it? Learn. You could, I
Right.
think the learnings have increased and it's become very easier now. So people
Right.
can learn, be ready is what I think. So
Especially with open source technologies and a bunch of
yes.
options that you have out there,
I
right?
have an intern right now, like he's doing amazing job. I think 15
Yeah.
years back, I was an intern. I don't know if I've even delivered enough
Right.
because I was stuck every day. What does this mean? I don't understand this. You
Right.
need to wait for somebody to unblock you. Now I think people are just getting unblocked themselves,
Right.
right? So great times for
Right.
people
Yeah.
doing
And
so.
I think like maybe a few years ago, like 10 years ago, data science was like sort of like the aspirational thing to be. And I think that
Yes,
coding has solved a lot of the algorithmic side of data science. But
right.
the sort of the shift left part, what you're talking about, the preparation, making sure, is the context right. And I think that's still open hard problems, right? Like I think that's still,
Right. It'll
um,
take a little more time. Maybe it'll
yeah,
get solved with these LLMs. I'm not sure, but definitely take a little more time because I mean, it's not like even if you look at organizations today with massive data teams, right? Not
right,
everybody does similar fashion, right?
right,
This PLC life cycle is adopted
right,
by some teams. Some teams do embedded, some teams do distributed. So your data models are also like that, right? Some
right,
could be central, some could be embedded. So there's no one solution yet. So I think it'll take time for them to standardize, evolve, and then get automated. So let's see.
right, right. Awesome, Prudhvi. I think this has been a really fun conversation. I think we've covered a lot of very, very interesting topics for our audience. So really glad we got you on the podcast. And how can people find you on Twitter, LinkedIn? Are you active on social media?
Thanks, Rahul. Yeah, LinkedIn is where I do go through a lot of content. I'm a little selective at responses, but
Sure.
yes, I do get my eyes on all the messages I keep getting in.
Nice.
So yeah, people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can search for Prudhvi Vasa, and I think I should appear. So feel free to
Awesome.
reach out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Great,
Cheers.
Rahul. Thanks for having me here.